Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Joe Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 sports video. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 Winter Olympics books in history. And of course, with the Winter Olympics going on right now and Canada winning a gold medal finally after 9 freaking days, I felt compelled to do a Winter Olympics list for today, February the 15th. It is actually Flag Day in Canada because 61 years ago, yeah, 61 years ago today, Canada's new flag, you know, the flag, the red stripes with the Canadian leaf in the middle, that was our flag. We used to be under the Union Jack, and then we started to move away from the British rule. Anyhow, we have 10 great moments of all time. And no, the Simpsons are not in it. I know everyone figures I'm a Simpsons guy. I am, but there's more important things than that. So let's look at the top 10. Our first one, number 10, is Katarina Witt and her figure skating back to back golds in Sarajevo 84 and Calgary 88. Katarina Witt was a pretty good skater and all that from East Germany. And no, she didn't take performance ending drugs like the summer athletes did. Well, the winter athletes, I think, did too. But yeah, she was pretty much the figure skater to beat and all that. She wowed crowds in Yugoslavia, as it was known at the time, in 1984, and then 1988 in Calgary at the Olympics when it came to Canada. She actually was too good to be true. It was a fight for silver, and Debbie Thomas of the United States was trying to make history as the first black athlete to win a medal at the Winter Olympics, I think. I can't remember. But anyway, she ended up finishing fourth, or I think she was out of the medals. But anyway, or was it bronze? Well, it doesn't matter because Liz Manley of Canada shocked the world by taking silver in her home country. But yeah, it was shocking. She took silver. But yeah, Katrina Witt was just too damn good and all that. So that was what ended up happening. Um, Number 9 is going to be Eddie the Eagle Edwards. I know a lot of people said that that shouldn't be it and all that, but the fact of the matter is that, he did capture the hearts with his spirit and determination of being a ski jumper and all that. And what ended up happening was that, um, you know, the British were not known for ski jumping and all that. Eddie the Eagle managed to get into the Olympics and all that. And he wanted to compete, so he did. So he went to Calgary. Unfortunately, his jumps were British records, but the fact of the matter was that Eddie the Eagle didn't soar that far. Well, he wore what Coke bottle glasses, which is kind of worse than my glasses are right now. But basically, yeah, he did all that, and he finished last in both events. But he still skied in the Olympics, which is hard to do. And of course, unfortunately, those Victorian nincompoops over the Olympics basically forced Olympic qualification standards so that people like Eddie the Eagle could not qualify and all that. Where's your Olympic spirit, man? It's kind of like losing Bonnie for the 2000 Olympics in Equatorial Guinea and all that because of the fact that, a lot of things happen. Number 8 is Stephen Bradbury winning gold for Australia in 2002 at Salt Lake City. Now, this is more likely than what happened in the men's giant slalom just yesterday as Brazil won the gold medal. It was like, what the heck? A Brazilian skier? Wow. Amazing how South American can win a Winter Olympic sport and all that. That's just unlikely and all that. Now, let me get this straight. Australia was not really known for winning golds before 2002. And then once Bradbury did, Australia took a lot of things. They even took a lot more freestyle skiing stuff and all that. You see the big air people from Australia and New Zealand. Anyhow, Stephen Bradbury was lucky to get in. A couple of races he didn't do so well, but he managed to get in thanks to disqualifications. So he snuck in, and then on the final turn of the 500-meter race, or was it a 1,000 meter? I can't remember. In short track speed skating, which is kind of akin to roller derby, people crashed out, and then Bradbury somehow, in some way, was the only one standing, crossed the line, and won a gold medal. It was just shocking to see Australia winning a winter sport, but it happens. So what can you do? Number 7 is the Jamaican bobsled team from 1988. Everyone knows about the Jamaican bobsled team with the movie Cool Runnings, which actually did take some civil liberties and all that. Civic liberties, I should say. But yeah, like they didn't really have the sled, they didn't really have the equipment. Other teams had to give them the stuff and all that. So they managed to qualify for the Olympics somehow in some way. And then, you know, they went to Calgary before them because you could sprint and all that. Feel the rhythm, feel the run, get on up, it's bobsled time. And the Jamaicans in real life did okay, but then on their fourth and final attempt, they crashed though and hurt themselves. In the movie, they pick up their sled and reach the finish line, but that doesn't happen in real life. But for them to make the Olympics is just like holy shit! It was just amazing to see the Jamaican bobsled team do the impossible, and they did it. Yeah, Cool Runnings was a good movie. One of John Candy's last projects before he died. Why not? Number 6 is Brian versus Brian, that being the great men's figure skating rivalry between Brian Bottano of the US and Brian Orser from Canada. And the main stage was Canada 1988 at the Olympics. Brian Bottano, everyone who's a early South Park fan knows about the song. What would Brian Bottano do? Do, 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 do. What would Brian Bottano do? Yeah, that movie really made sure it happened. But yeah, but he was a very good skater, and so was Canada's Brian Orser, who was a technical wizard. Orser, I think, is a skating coach of many talents. But anyhow, Orser and Bottano were facing each other in a tightly packed competition and all that. Everyone was glued to the screens in Calgary to see if Boitano would beat Orser in his home country. Unfortunately, we all know Boitano beat Orser, but it was close. I think it was a 5-4 split and all that. It could have went either way, and Orser would have won the gold. So, yeah, it was just inevitable and all that. Number 5 is Eric Heiden and his 5 gold medals, 1980 Lake Placid. Lake Placid getting the Olympics was just one thing. I mean, the serene New York mountain town, if you will, getting the Olympics was amazing and all that. And it was in the shadow of the whole Soviet US battle because the Soviets, a couple of months earlier, invaded Afghanistan. But because it was too late to punish the Soviets for that, the Soviets came over to Lake Placid. But that's a different story. Eric Heiden would use the speed skating ice to his advantage, winning 5 gold medals. Now, speed skating back in the 80s was different than 2026 because they would do all their events outdoors, whereas we now see Olympic ovals like indoors because it's much easier and the elements don't screw you over. But Eric Heiden went to 5 individual events in speed skating and won all 5, beating Germany, beating the Dutch, beating Norway, and even beating Canada. But yeah, Eric Heiden was just amazing and all that. To win 5 gold medals in one Olympics is akin to Mark Spitz or Michael Phelps with their hauls from their Olympics, their Olympic dreams. Number 4 is Dan Jansen and his quest for Olympic gold. Dan Jansen was one of the most hard luck speed skaters in Olympics history. In 1988, he was the favorite in the 1,000 meters. When hours before his race, he actually got a phone call that his sister Jane had died of leukemia. Jansen, unfortunately, was too unfocused in a sense. I mean, you can't blame him. And he ended up crashing. However, he failed to win a gold medal for the family and kept missing. 88, he missed chances. 92, he missed chances. And then 94, Lillehammer came along. And Jansen, after missing on the first attempt, he got to the 1,000 meters and shocked the world by not only finishing the race, but winning gold and in a world record time. And he would carry his daughter, known as Jane, with him on the podium, I think, because to share the moment. Number 3 is Canada's golden goal from Vancouver Hockey 2010. Canada is Canada was hosting the Winter Olympics for the second time in 2010. Canada had been snake bit. No gold medals in Montreal, although Greg Joy shocked the world by taking silver in the high jump, even though that he wasn't really favored that much. And Dwight Stones ended up taking bronze. Also the American. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't win gold in 1988 despite Brian Orser and Liz Manley getting silvers in figure skating. So Canada was screwed over, but thanks to day 2 action, Alex Bilodeau won the men's moguls event and dedicated it to his brother with cerebral palsy, Frederick. And it was just amazing. All that Canada would end up winning 14 golds, the most by a home nation in the Olympics. I mean, not even those Russians, even though they uh, doped in 2014, could touch that, even with their gold still staying in there. But yeah, Canada, the last event was hockey, as per usual, and Canada was hoping to win in Vancouver. Canada had a long way to go. They lost to the States on the final round robin competition. They were forced to play the preliminary round against Germany, which they easily beat, and then they took out Russia in the quarters. Slovakia, plucky Slovakian team in the semis that saw Pavel Dimitrov come within inches of tying the game to force overtime. But yeah, Canada would take on the U.S. in the gold medal game. Of course, it's border war and all that before the whole Trump situation. But the fact is that Canada was up 2-0, gave up 2 goals, including one to Zach Parise with under a minute left. Tie game at 2, and then within 7 minutes, Canada scored in overtime. Ryan Miller was in net for the U.S., Roberto Luongo for Canada, but Miller couldn't believe it. But Jerome McGinley had the pass in the corner and won. Later, Crosby got the pass, scored the goal, and gave Canada a once in a lifetime gold medal on home ice. It was just amazing. Canada went nuts. Although 2002 also was a great moment too, breaking our 50-year drought. But yeah, 2010, winning it on home turf, we did it. Number 2 is Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding, 94 Lillehammer. This was a massive competition. Figure skating was big. It was a saga. Tanya Harding was a decent American skater who landed a triple axel or triple lutz in 1991, and everyone went nuts. But Harding was losing it. She was asthmatic. She was volatile. She had troubles with her skates sometimes. Nancy Kerrigan, who was brought up prim and proper, was going to steal American hearts. There were 2 chances to get in the Olympic figure skating and all that. And Tanya Harding wanted to get to Lillehammer badly. So her husband, Jeff Gillooly, decided to hire a hitman to whack Nancy Kerrigan in the leg so that Kerrigan could not compete at the U.S. Nationals in Detroit, which was the qualifying thing. And Nancy couldn't. Tanya Harding won, and a young Michelle Kwan ended up being the alternate. But anyhow, they decided to give Nancy Kerrigan a spot in the Olympics because of pity. And then, of course, the big saga happened as it was revealed that about Gillooly's attack, that Tanya did have insider information. They wanted to kick her out of the Olympic stuff, but she threatened a lawsuit, and the Americans let it go. It worked out because CBS had massive TV ratings for the thing in Lillehammer and the figure skating. Tanya Harding's quest for perfection would blow up in her face, taking 8th place, having to start her routine over because of a skate blade. And Nancy Kerrigan ended up taking silver, although Oksana Bayou won gold for Ukraine. That was big because, Ukraine used to be part of Russia. She was orphaned because her parents had problems. And yeah, that was big. But Nancy Kerrigan said that everything was corny after her silver medal and all that. But it was resilience. Tanya Harding would be booted from figure skating for life and tried to be a professional boxer, but failed miserably. And number 1 has to be Miracle on Ice 1980. This was far beyond hockey and all that. So Lake Placid, as I said, it was in the shadow of the whole U.S.-Russia situation and all that. The American hockey team had problems. They couldn't win golds to save their lives. Actually, 1960, in what they called the Forgotten Gold Medal, they actually shocked the world by beating the Czechs to win the gold. Canada took silver, if memory serves me, or did we take bronze? Can't remember, but yeah, the U.S. shocked Canada and all that, and they took on the Czechs. It actually was big because in 1960, the Americans got help from the Russian captain who mined this, saying that for oxygen, and that's how the U.S. beat the Czechs. But 1980 was even bigger. The Americans were plugged in from all college players because obviously no professionals allowed. Herb Brooks trying to do his job. If you watch the movie Miracle, like I have with Kurt Russell, it's fantastic. The Americans played the Russians in an exhibition game. The Soviets won 10-3, crushing the Americans. And the Americans tied Norway 3-3. And Coach Herb made the big skate until Mike Ruziani or O'Callahan basically lashed out at him. And Coach Brooks said, "That's what I need. You not to fall in line." So anyway, the Americans would face Sweden in the first game of the round robin. They were down by one. They tied it on a goal by Bill Baker over the shoulder of Pelle Lindbergh. Tied the game. There was no overtime, so ties were there. And then they took out the Czechs quite easily, a little too easily. The Americans would be going to the medal round alongside Sweden with Russia and Finland from the other pool. The Americans would play the Soviets. The Finns would take on the Swedes. Now, of course, this was round robin. They carried over the results, so the U.S., Sweden, and the Russia-Finland game counted in the standings. So then they would play twice. So the Americans would have to play Russia and Finland. So the Americans took on the Soviets and scored a late punch-and goal with 1 second left over Tretiak to make it 2-2. Taken off, the Russian coach got pissed off and decided to put Michigan in the nets. And it actually did a bad thing. It gave the Americans some momentum. Americans were tight. Jim Craig was playing the game of his life in net. And then Mikey Ruzioni scored with like 5 minutes left, and the Americans won. And Al Michaels on the call said, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. They beat the Soviets at their own game. Of course, as any good hockey fan knows, that was not the end of it because the Americans still had to beat Finland. If they lost to Finland, they could have even taken silver behind the Soviets. Herb Brooks basically told them, and in his words, if you lose this game, you'll take it to your fucking graves. Your fucking graves. So anyway, the Americans beat the Finns, thankfully enough, 4-2, and got the gold medal that everyone wanted. And it was truly a miracle on ice and all that. And next Sunday will be the 46th anniversary of it. Will the Americans get the gold in men's hockey? Because February 22nd is when the finals are happening in the morning. But, maybe the Americans pull off another miracle on ice. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond at 2.